Call to order meeting number 473 of the Lake George Park Commission and ask Michelle if we have a quorum.
Yes, you do.
We do have a quorum, thank you. Everyone has a copy of the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any additions, corrections?
I move the minutes be accepted as presented.
Yeah, second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the February 27th meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Same thing with fiscal actions report.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved to approve and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Project review. Why don't we start off with Joe and the project review actions report?
Okay.
That's fourth one down. Need these.
Hang on.
Yep, there you go. Go 5.
Resolution 2018-09. Whereas the Commission has received and reviewed the Project Review Actions Report prepared by the staff and dated April 10th, 2018. And whereas the Project Review Commission recommends acceptance of the Project Review Actions Report, now therefore be resolved that the Commission directs that the Project Review Actions Report be incorporated in the minutes of the full Commission meeting. So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the project review action report. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. First project is the tour boat application submitted by Adirondack Water Sports. Joe or Molly, do you have something to say about that?
So this is, Mr. Peter Vokes is here, and his counsel, to represent Adirondack Water Sports permit application for a tour boat for operation of 2 towing vessels. This is before the commission because towing is proposed in areas of the lake that our recreation study says is over capacity. And the gentlemen are here to represent the project and answer any questions you have.
Okay. I take it you're for the applicant, and just for the record, name, so forth.
Absolutely. Chairman Young, members of the commission, my name is Jeff Meyer. I'm an attorney with Meyer and Fuller here in Lake George. I'm here with Peter Vokes, the owner of Adirondack Water Sports. And essentially I'm here and we're here because of the application, and essentially more specifically some of the conditions that were intimated by staff. Those conditions are could in effect put Adirondack Water Sports out of business. They're obviously very serious to him, so we're here to hopefully dissuade the commission from the need to use those conditions. My client and his predecessors have been operating the ski and waterboarding school at a Chicks Marina since the mid-90s. Mr. Vokes personally purchased it in 2003. So for the past 15 years, he has been operating at a Chicks Marina in the same portions of the lake. His use would have been included and was included in the 2005 rec study and again later in the 2015 rec study. His use of the lake hasn't changed over time. To the extent that the rec study shows things have gotten a little more congested in parks, not necessarily obviously going to disagree with that. What we can offer is that we're not part of that problem. We use the congested areas when they're not congested. They get congested when the boats start to show up and anchor and moor and come in and out. Use these different areas. My client has long left. He does this for a couple of reasons. One, it isn't safe for him or his skiers, and that is paramount to the business. To have a blanket restriction like that essentially forces him into the center of the lake at all times of the day when you're not going to get safe times to navigate. You're always going to be dealing with wind. You're always going to be dealing with waves. You're going to be dealing with the actual tour boats, the Adirondack, the Mohicans, the St. Sacrament, the boats that use the lake, and it's, it just makes no sense for him to try and teach an 8-year-old how to water ski in the middle of the lake. That's why he uses those bays. That's why business is set up the way it is, and restrictions are so detrimental to him. Happy to answer any questions. Mr. Volks is here. He can certainly speak to his business and how his business operates to further allay any hesitations the commission may have.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, do you have questions for the applicant this time?
Yes, I do. How many boats do you already have in operation there? I guess I missed it somewhere.
2 boats.
You already have 2, that's okay.
Correct.
Okay. And you want to
Since
put,
2003.
right, and you want to put 2 more on?
No, I want to continue operating the same way I've been for the last 15 years.
Okay, that's what I wasn't sure of.
Hey, Joe, did we get any complaints in Huddle Bay?
I do get complaints in Huddle Bay about, all kinds of boats, water skiing, boats. I've had several from this company, from the hotels. They have their guests that are out swimming or kayaking all over the place. They have one last year reference to a PB, and then another one where one of the boats was stopped by Sergeant Ross. They were going around in between a boat that was anchored. It was far enough out from the island and an island, and just annoying people. So, Huddle Bay is an area where gets considerable complaints for many things.
Any further questions?
Is there any chance by using Northwest Bay? I mean, there's a wide open space that's pretty protected.
Yeah, we do utilize Northwest Bay. It's just with a half-hour appointment, leaving Chicks Marina and driving all the way to Northwest Bay, it's just not feasible. It's a drive to get up there with all the waves and everything, and sometimes we use Basin Bay, but with the increased traffic from Blue Water Manor, we try to stay out of there.
And even to, the boats are docked at Chicks, so we're already in, regardless, we have to leave Huddle Bay. Even to get anywhere in the lake, and to the extent that, there was an incident where somebody was a little too close to shore, it was the first we had heard about it, and we can address and already have taken steps to address that with the driver to make sure that that doesn't happen again. There are regulations on the books relative to safe passage and shoreline restrictions if we obviously comply, and expect our drivers and require our drivers to comply.
When you're teaching a kid, where do you do it?
Where do we do it?
Yeah.
Usually normal in the middle of Huddle Bay.
So you're out in deep water,
What's that?
you're out in deep water, you're not teaching off shore.
No,
Okay.
staying right in deep water.
Okay.
Yeah. And most of the time that we do teach, we teach off a bar that goes off the side of the boat. So
Right.
for a beginning skier, it's the safest way to do it.
So it really wouldn't matter whether the water's deep or shallow where you're doing it.
No.
So you could
Depending on water
You could
conditions.
teach in Northwest Bay if that were a nicer spot. And we've all probably who had boats down the south end.
Mhm.
I've been in that mess of Bolton Bay, if I can use the term. It's really a mess most of the time.
Yeah.
And, it seems to me, I know it's a drive to go in Northwest Bay, but it's not 2 hours, it's about 15 minutes up through there.
Mhm.
And if I were teaching, I'd be in Northwest Bay.
Oh, yeah, and we do utilize it if we have a 4 or 5 hour appointment with a group, then we go all the way up there and spend the entire time up there, because it's just wide open, it's much better water. Depending on the conditions, if the wind's out of the south.
Yeah, then you got a little bit of a
Northwest Bay's not
problem.
very
That's right.
great.
When you, could you tell me what the majority of your business is? Is it teaching, is it doing wakeboarding, or is it doing water skiing?
It's about, I would say more of it's going to be skiing, because we get mostly families, tourists that come here, and they're mostly beginning kids, that the family just wants to get the kids up on skis and get them going, because they did it when they were younger.
How much of your business do you do in Huddle Bay versus Bolton Bay? Do you usually teach them over in the southern end of Huddle Bay, or do you go up to the next one up to Bolton Bay?
Mostly in the southern and Huddle Bay. Yeah.
Okay.
Just because that's the way conditions are. If the lake is completely flat, like out in Bolton Bay or towards the Sagamore, we'll be out there. It all depends on traffic and conditions.
Well, when you were talking about going into Basin Bay with all the traffic from the Blue Water Manor, what about all the traffic from the Algonquin?
Usually, I mean, when you get to the southern part of Huddle Bay, you don't get a ton of traffic on that side of it. But it is more open than Basin Bay is.
I think all the questions kind of speak to the larger point is the business is flexible and wants to remain flexible. You know, it really just needs calm, flat water and flexibility to freely use the lake and go to areas where they're not congested, because the more congestion, the rougher the water. You know, but it's that flexibility to be able to use Basin Bay, Bolton Bay, to go up to Northwest Bay if one's coming out of north, to be able to have that flexibility just to be able to run the business based on what the conditions require.
Now, you said you have 2 boats, and you've been using 2 boats, and when I read everything, it said you could go up to 12 outings a day. Does that mean per boat or with the 2 boats?
Per boat. So
So you
say,
could do 24.
correct. And that's like a half-hour appointment, or a 45-minute appointment, an hour appointment. You know, it all depends, it's, you know, what the people want.
We're required to show that to the maximum potential,
But that's per boat. Yeah, I was, yeah, okay.
but it's rare that you have that much usage in a single boat that day.
So you could conceivably operate 2 boats in the southern end of Huddle Bay. Would you do that, or would you
Usually
take
they-
1 boat somewhere else?
My policy is they need to stay away from each other. So if one of them's down in there, the other one can't go there.
Well, what about okay, and now I have another issue with the wakeboarding, with the wake that, you know, your boat, those are specially designed boats that, you know, have the ballast and they churn up that big wake. And the fact that that's it's not a really huge area. And what about the impact on, do you worry about the impact on the shoreline with a wake that big?
Well, one boat is a direct drive inboard, there's no ballast tanks or anything like that, that's designed to have the flattest wake possible. The other one does have ballast tanks, but honestly, we don't get anybody that's good enough that needs a wake that big, because we're teaching mostly kids, so we're trying to keep the wake.
So you're
as
doing
flat.
mostly the water skiing versus the
Correct.
wakeboarding?
Yes. So we want the flattest wake possible, and the smaller the wake, the better. So when we will move people to the front of the boat, you know, if we got a real little kid, say like a 6-year-old or something like that on there, and you gotta go slower. So, you know, when a boat goes slow, you produce a bigger wake.
Right.
So we'll move people to the front of the boat to try to bring that wake down, so it's the best for the kid that's on the deck.
Any further questions for the applicant right now?
Yeah, training of your drivers. I mean, you're obviously not doing all the operations of the boat. So you have, how experienced, how do you assure yourself, I mean, other than your personal observation of the experience of your boat operators?
I mean, I personally train them all, and then when I hire them, I make sure that they, you know, obviously, boat people, ski people, and they all have to have a PB license, so they have to have, you know, some sort of training, but I'm out there beginning of the season training them all, going through, and then I have a young gentleman that, runs basically for me day-to-day operations on that side of it, when I come out here. You know, he keeps an eye on it and lets me know what's going on.
And of course, you always have 2 people on the boat, the operator and the observer.
Yeah.
And is the observer qualified to bring the boat in the event the operator goes?
Well, we're only allowed, we can have, basically, we use our customers as our observers, so we don't have to have 2 people on the boat
Okay.
each time.
Oh.
That's just the way the New York State has set it up for us. So we, you know, there is a qualified person that has to go on the boat in terms of a parent, somebody like that.
Right.
And that's the spotter to watch.
Right.
And again, we do use mirrors, keep an eye on the skier itself.
Remind me, what hours you?
Hours of operation?
Yeah.
7 to 7.
Any further questions? Thank you, sir. Is there someone else to speak on this application? No. Comments from the commissioners for consideration. Dee, you get to go first this year.
As a water skier, I'm not much known. I would- We used to ski and slalom, and when I was a kid, we slalom every day. The best time to do your slalom is about 11 at night, by the way. Under the full moon.
And living in
Glass after
Ticonderoga.
then. So I understand the need for flat water. Fortunately, things change in life, and one of the things that's changed is the amount of usage that Bolton Bay and Huddle Bay and Basin Bay are getting versus 15 years ago. Boat traffic is just more prevalent, and frankly, as a North End guy, I go down there in terror of getting into Bolton Bay because the waves are always a mess, even when the wind's not blowing. It's just waves. I'd be in Northwest Bay in a second if I were running a ski organization. Now, at 7 in the morning, probably okay in Huddle Bay and Basin Bay. Probably at 7 at night, maybe the same. But in high hours of lake use, for me, that would probably be from 9 in the morning to maybe 5 in the afternoon. It's a mess over there in Bolton Bay, and I'd be in Northwest Bay, as I said, up there, even though it's a little bit of a trip to get there. It's a better experience for the skiers, and if it's blowing out of the south, unless it's absolutely dead southeast, you're probably okay on one. You can pick one side or the other of Northwest Bay to get a little bit of flat water. So that's what I do.
Joe?
Yeah, I have concerns about the boat traffic. I know Algonquin opens up at noon, so certainly, that draws in a lot of traffic. We would really try and encourage them to use Northwest Bay or to ski earlier in the morning, from 7 to noon or something like that. But I mean, it's a business that is first come, first served, so it's tough. This is a tough one to try and minimize boat traffic in Huddle Bay would be my concern.
I share Joe's concern. I would encourage you to stay away from the south end of Huddle Bay. Avoid Treasure Point, all those residential areas, and the amount of traffic. And I get down there 2 or 3 times a week myself, and I see what's happening out there. And if it continues and the problem gets worse, we're going to end up with a 5-mile-an-hour zone, which prohibits a lot of the activity in that southern basin. That's my concern.
Mr. Parker?
I spent a fair number of hours in Huddle Bay, and I've never been scared by the ski boats. In fact, I didn't even know they were there, to be honest with you. I've been scared by plenty of private boat operators as we go through there. I think that I'm confident that they show a safer reaction to issues than the normal boater that I'm meeting up with in Huddle Bay, and with reservations that you've already voiced, I think you go forward and use his good judgment on the time of the day and the traffic.
I echo everybody's sentiments here, but, I was reading over the secret that you had to fill out. Well, this is why I asked about whether you had the 2 boats or if you're going to have 2 more. Will the proposed action result in a substantial increase in traffic above present levels? And there's a no in the box. Well, at 2 boats at maximum, your business is that good, 12 times a day, I just think it would result in a substantial increase in traffic above the present levels. As an avid water skier myself, those were the good old days. I can't do it now with a total shoulder replacement. But, it's always great to ski inside the bay. But when we were, back in the day, I can remember, there was a lot of traffic in our bay, and that was up at Hewlett's Landing. So, we skied out in the middle of the lake. I mean, you're right. It's tough when you're teaching somebody to put them in the middle of the lake and have them, try to get their skis together and try to get out of the water. It's so much better to be in. But again, you're still not at the shore in shallow water where somebody can stand with them and keep their skis together so they can get out of the water. So you're already in water that's over their heads, so maybe you need to go to a place that is less congested, and that is a mess in there at times. Thanks.
Mark?
Well, I agree with some of the sentiments. Obviously, this business has been conducted for at least 2003, I believe the record says, and before that by another owner. And it appears that they've dealt with the increase in traffic. I mean, the search is for flat water. I think that's what the key is here, and they'll go to where there is flat water, which would be where there probably isn't a lot of boats operating. So I'm pretty confident, as Ken would say, that they are conducting this in a safe manner, conducting their business, and we'll go where they need to go.
Bill?
I don't know if I have anything more to add. I would agree that I agree with some of the comments that are made. I'm very concerned as I look at a map of Lake George and where I still skiing, as I used to all the time. There aren't a lot of options to get flat water in that area if we kick them out of Huddle Bay. I know Northwest Bay is great. I agree. I used to drive all the way from Harris Bay on a north wind. We'd go up there. But it's a long hike, even from Huddle Bay. So I don't know what we do. It seems like I appreciate especially one of the comments that the owner made about putting him out of business. I would not want to do that. And I'm concerned that that might be where we're going.
Thank you, Bill. Number one, I'm not concerned about the operation per se. I'm pretty sure their record shows that they operate a safe operation and they're well thought out, the presentation and so forth. However, a few years back, we spent thousands of dollars to do a study on lake capacity. And at that time, it was determined that Huddle Bay is already above capacity. And it certainly hasn't improved. I think that to ignore the fact that we have a very congested area, I'm sympathetic to the business and so forth, but every business faces problems. And I, for one, couldn't approve this application if there was going to be more water skiing and wakeboarding in Huddle Bay. I just don't think it's a safe operation. I think you're looking for something that's going to happen that we wouldn't be too happy with. I think it's an accident waiting to happen someday. I agree with the other commissioners. I've been in that bay, and it's not so much the professional operations, the water ski operation and the everything. They operate pretty well, but there's a lot of people with boats in there that have no clue about a safe operation of a motorboat, and this only adds to that. I am in favor of the application with the restriction that it not operate in Huddle Bay. I realize that pushes them further out, but when I take my grandkids water skiing, I have to go 3 or 4 miles across the lake to take them water skiing because it isn't safe in the bays around Hewitts. So that's my opinion, that I would be open, and matter of fact, I would make a motion that we add to this application the restriction that it not operate within Huddle Bay.
What if we, question, put a restriction on you can't operate in Huddle Bay from 11 o'clock to 7 or something like that? You know, the only time you can operate in Huddle Bay is in the morning between 7 and 11. You know, whatever it might be, because that's lower traffic. Algonquin is closed, you know, and that kind of stuff. And Chicks is just getting out their boats.
That's entirely possible, but
it's hard to manage.
I would like to ask Joe John's input as to how you're going to enforce a restriction like that.
That's right.
Yeah.
But shouldn't the same restriction be applied to the other existing businesses? I mean, the business has a history of being there.
I agree, if you're going to restrict.
So let's say to Chicks Marina, rental operation,
Right.
which is, I would bet that 15 rental boats out of Chicks on a daily basis would provide much more adverse risk to me personally than their operation, because now you've got mom, dad, and the 3 kids, and it's 18-foot going this way. I mean, the company has been there long before I understand our study and I respect our study, but who causes the jam up at Huddle Bay? Is it Adirondack or is it the rest of us? All of us admit to having been there, so we're part of the traffic problem too. I mean, I don't see how we shut a lake down.
I understand where you're coming from, Commissioner, but I just don't see boats running 20, 25 miles an hour with skiers behind them in Huddle Bay
No, I don't.
when it's busy, period.
I agree.
So are you going to restrict all water skiing in Huddle Bay?
We're
All
talking-
boats going 20, 25 miles an hour?
We're talking about a new business here.
No, we're
No.
not.
No.
Well, we're
This
talking
is
about it, we're
existing-
talking about a, renewing a permit
Right.
for a business.
That's not new business.
Okay, it's not new
They're
business.
local taxpayers.
I didn't know, but
No, I mean, I don't disagree with all of your comments as regards the issue, but somewhere you have to put the human element of these folks are going to make it work the best they can because they have a lifetime investment into it. But if you're going to restrict them from water skiing there, are you going to restrict yourself from water skiing there?
I don't water ski there.
That's not the point.
I think that confuses the issue anyway.
It
We're really
does.
here looking at an application to, for this particular business, and yes, a lot of the congestion is not his cause, but nevertheless, you have to deal with different conditions in your businesses, and, the condition that is making this business less
And my
less
answer,
reasonable in Huddle Bay is the fact that there are just more boats. Yes, he didn't cause that, but you have to go with what you got, as they say. I would be comfortable if if from 7 to 9, let's say in the morning, if we're okay in Huddle Bay. After that, you should be somewhere else.
but I'd also answer your comment and say that as other businesses that use Huddle Bay come before this commission, I would assume that we're going to examine their impact on the bay also. But that, because this is the business before us now. If we get other businesses, we're not going to go through and go around Lake George right now and decide who can water ski where. It's not gotten that bad. It's not a dictatorship. I'm just telling you, I have a concern about water skiing and wakeboarding in Huddle Bay during congested hours. I think your idea is a good one. I have concern about it, period.
I agree.
Hey, Joe, what about managing and enforcing the 7 to 10 rule? I mean, are you guys around there that
Yeah,
much?
we have people on it.
Quite frankly, Joe, what difference would it be if they were restricted 24/7? You'd still have to look at it occasionally.
Yeah, we're
If
still
the
gonna be
time,
there. That's
if you
the
go there at 10:01 and find them coming in from water skiing, I mean, I don't see enforcing a regulation like that as
Yeah.
being a big burden on the park commission, because they got to enforce it 24/7 anyway.
Right.
I think we need to be a little bit careful because we're talking about the Huddle Bay at this moment, but the same problem is existing all over the lake.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, it is and it isn't. Hart Bay is pretty open, so 24/7.
Except for that big sailboat in the way.
You want a Hart Bay restriction added?
Cook Bay is too.
I know you want to speak, and I'll give you a chance, but you're probably benefiting more by listening to these guys go back and forth.
I'm happy to listen.
You have any further comments?
No, you asked for comments and I provided them.
What?
Thank you, though.
Don't get testy now.
I'm not. We're just so glad to have you back.
Well,
Well, how would we word a restriction, like it's okay to operate between 7 a.m. and, let's say, 11 a.m. in the morning, and then, it even gets pretty congested at 7 because people are leaving the Algonquin, and it's pretty busy between 5, well, it's busy all day long there, but it's,
No, I would say Algonquin's busy from noon on.
yeah, it is.
You
It
know,
is.
and
Right.
also you got rental boats coming back
do.
and all that stuff. if there's any restriction, I would say it's from 7 to 10 or 7 to 11.
You're talking about AM.
AM, AM only.
Yes, yes, you can't.
And
If I
then the
were
rest of
skiing-
it would be outside the bay.
If I were skiing up there at 6:59, we'd be on that boat.
Or, let's say you could,
And you could tow us off the end of the dock.
you could ski anytime between now, morning till 11 o'clock.
And then
something
move the
like that.
operation, the rest of the,
The rest of it is outside the Huddle Bay.
you
And are
know,
we gonna put a restriction on him, but what about the 100 others that are gonna be in that bay?
but they're not here for,
What are you
they
talking
haven't
about, the
come
100
to us.
other water restrictions?
So to that point, as he has to drive out of Huddle Bay, he'll be passing competition, other ski schools that are skiing
No,
in
there's,
Huddle Bay, and he'll drive.
I don't think there's other ski schools.
So
in
there are no other public vessels, so any other public vessel that would want to operate in this area for towing would have to come before this board, so.
Yes.
Similar to parasails in the village, which is at capacity, we wouldn't add any more. Any other PV that wants to tow in these areas that are congested, he would essentially be the only one that would be authorized, and anyone else would have to come before this board.
You know, this thing is compounded because we're seeing a large increase of public vessels. People that have a boat, they get a license to drive it as a PV, and they hire out. And they pick up customers wherever, and they go wherever. And that's what's happening in the Huddle Bay. It's not just an organized operation like this one. It's all those other PVs that come to the various places in the lake, and they operate their business without us being involved.
Right.
If we go back to the reasoning for why the commission even decided to get involved with the charter businesses, Joe did an analysis that showed an exponential increase in the amount of charter boats on Lake George. I think it was, Joe, quote me if I'm wrong, somewhere in the previous 5 to 7 years, there was maybe 2 or 3, and then within 2 years, there was 12. And we get constant calls from people asking about the process to become a charter boat on Lake George. So I think what you're looking at is in the last few years, really seeing a dramatic increase. And the commissioners don't see a lot of it, but staff gets a lot of calls about business operations on the lake, how it's impacted. Joe Johns, our lieutenant, works on a daily basis for it. So this conversation is important, and I think as Joe says, we do have some precedent. The operator that was working out of Shore Colony and Lake George,
Right.
You said your operation is approved, however, you need to operate north of Diamond Island, and that applicant was modified his game plan to work, and he's been doing successfully at it. So that's kind of where we are. I think we're going to see many more of these in the future.
So is it appropriate to make a motion that maybe we allow skiing in Huddle Bay from 7 to 10? After that, they have to go somewhere else?
That is up to the commissioners.
Yeah, that's totally up to us. Yeah.
Yes, the applicant.
I think before we do anything, this is a little bit out of our normal procedure, but I think that there've been some questions that have arisen, and you're beginning to see this somehow, some of this leading, that we should give the applicant a chance to reply. Thoughts, sir?
I appreciate that, and I'll certainly keep it brief. One quick point is, we're not talking about more, we're talking about a continuation. This has been going on since 2003. We're not adding boats, we're not adding traffic into these areas. We're asking for permission to continue. We've certainly heard and we're listening to all the comments from all the commissioners and understand that you would like us to remain out of Huddle Bay as much as humanly possible. And we're not opposed to that. Hopefully you understand that we're going to avoid Huddle Bay in any congested area of the lake. I just don't think it's required to regulate. In terms of if there is a restriction, you have a wonderful attorney who could craft perfect language that would make it clear and would be enforceable. My hope is that it's clear that it only applies to the act of towing, so there's no confusion coming and going relative to Huddle Bay within these areas, because it's a part of the business. He has to come in and have us to pick up people, and plans on continuing to do that. But thank you for the discussion and the opportunity to speak.
Does your client go anywhere to pick up customers, say motel, Sagamore, private home?
Yes. Yes.
further
Well,
questions?
one thing I want,
Well, we'll-
one thing I want to just bring up is the fact that, yes, the business has been operating since 2003, that's for 15 years ago. The whole traffic situation was a lot less than it is today. Things have increased tremendously on the lake in that period of time, as far as activity goes, boat traffic.
Commissioners, any? I don't think anybody's going to ask you any questions any longer. If you want, you can sit down, or you can stand there and be poised. It doesn't matter. I have a question. You're either going to have to make an amendment
Condition.
to a condition, place a condition, which we've done many times.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you're going to have to vote on the application as it exists. And the proper way to do that is, if you want to put a condition on it, is to make a motion for the condition and see if there's a majority of the commissioners that are willing to add that amendment to the application.
I'd be
One
happy.
question, is does this application come in front of us, how often does this application come in front of us that we get to review it again and change conditions?
In other words, how long is the permit good for?
Typically, marina permits, tour boat permits will be issued for 5-year terms, which time they're renewed at the staff level if there's no proposed changes. If they want to increase or materially change the operation, then it would come back to the board. Otherwise, it wouldn't typically come back unless you guys won't want to see it within a certain time.
So if it's coming back every 5 years on a routine basis, I just would encourage us, if we're going to put a restriction on it, to try and make the restriction a little bit more forgiving, or a little bit not as restrictive, because we will have an opportunity again in 5 years to look at it and say, is this working, is it not working? Do we want to make it more restrictive at that point?
There's one proviso to that. We don't have to wait 5 years.
We don't.
To look at any.
But I don't want to put the applicant
to
through
look
an
at any
annual
permit.
process necessarily,
You
either. It's
can look
an
at a
ongoing
permit,
business.
you can look at a permit at any time.
Okay.
I'm
It's
a
not-
little uncomfortable with the restriction, because we're picking out one boat, one operation out of many, many. And that's not gonna solve the problem by imposing a restriction on this individual. So I'm inclined to respond to the statement that it's a continuation of what's been going on. And we recognize, I think all of us recognize, that there is a crowding problem, but putting a restriction on one individual is not really the solution
I
to the
agree.
problem.
I agree with
And
that.
let me ask you, does that mean you would raise the question of, and I'm not even sure that's within our province to do it, to put a restriction on no activity in Huddle Bay? Is that what you're saying?
No, he's,
Yeah. No, I would agree. I mean, if his business has remained the same for 15 years, but crowding has increased, and we know that because of the study, then restricting him is not addressing the reason why the crowding has increased.
I think Mark has a valid point, that the situation today is not what it was 15 years ago. And as we look at other businesses within Huddle Bay, you're gonna be faced with the same problem, not just Huddle Bay, throughout the lake. We've already found it with the parasail operations that there are severe restrictions, I think, on them because of the congestion on the lake. Congestion is a problem, there's no question about it. And your comment is, do we kill the entire chicken, or do we just pluck it one feather at a time? I don't.
my concern is that, you're towing a skier, and I did it many times, and it's not the boat operator or anything else, but if the skier falls and you got a lot of traffic in the lake, somebody run over their skier before you can get back and get them next to the boat. I've had sometimes when I'm teaching skiing, is the guy runs over my rope. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other guy.
the other guy.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes when you're driving the boat, you run over your own rope, too.
No, I don't do that.
Never.
That only happens to people on the East Shore, but
Okay,
I think Joe's right on that situation. You know,
I-
there's
I-
some things that apply to skiers and the rope and the boat that don't apply to other people. And we don't regulate private boats running around in bays like that, but we do regulate commercial operations. That's what this is, okay? And I think we don't respond to the crowding in Huddle Bay and just put our head in the sand and say, well, it's crowded, but we're not gonna do anything about it. Okay, then I don't think that's doing a service to the lake. I don't think it's doing a service to the people who use the lake. I don't even think it's doing a service to these organizations who are trying to make a living, okay? Because I think we owe it to them to be able to encourage them to be safe. And I don't see a problem, frankly, that if we give them the early morning section of Huddle Bay when it's calm and flat, and most people aren't out there yet, and then have to go somewhere else when he would probably go somewhere else anyway, because the conditions are gonna get wavy and bumpy, it's not gonna be fun.
That's the point. I think we would go somewhere else. I think that's just the,
Whatever we do here, we'll have to be prepared to do it elsewhere in the lake too.
Well, that's,
Exactly, that's fine.
that's for sure.
What if we just said, and rather than make it a condition, to just say we encourage you to ski between 7 and 11, no longer, let's put it this way, to ski only after 11 o'clock outside of Huddle Bay. We encourage you, not to say as a condition.
conditions should be enforceable.
I know.
Yeah, you're passing the buck.
I know.
But it's interesting, I mean, they're here in front of the commission and hearing all of this for the first time in my years on the commission, and yet there is, to my knowledge, there's nothing that this company has done that's incorrect.
Right.
There's no physical knowledge, there's no,
Exactly.
Joe's got his hand on his shoulder getting ready to cart away to the good judge.
Good safety
So
record.
we are dealing with a lot of anecdotal evidence. As a former property owner on the lake, I bellyached all summer long about amateur water skiers in Boone Bay. I don't think I ever had a water ski school in there, and just boaters in general. So there just got to be a way that a good business person operates his business, whether he's pumping gas or whatever he's doing, and he knows how to do it safely. He understands the risks, and he manages the risks. That's part of the insurance program that we all should learn. If you put a limitation on them, what about those nice days in September when Huddle Bay is almost empty?
Right. It's good judgment.
Now, he says, I can't, look, his customer says, you got perfect water out here. Well, I can't use that perfect water because it's 11:12 a.m. There hasn't been a boat out there all day long. So there are so many limitations to the limitations.
Yeah.
And no, I'm not here to put anybody out of business that,
Well, I don't think anybody, well, I
every once in a while we try to.
I
How
don't think,
about dead horse?
you know, there are several people, sitting in this audience that know that this commission and the chairman bend over backwards to accommodate businesses, and we're willing to give anybody a fair chance. And I'm certainly up to that, but I am very concerned about water skiing, not just in Huddle Bay, but this one, we happen to have this issue before us. We don't have the entire lake issue before us at this point, but we have this issue before us. And I can't help it, it concerns me. I can't visualize a boat going 20 miles an hour with a skier behind it in that bay. Of course, I've never been there at 7 o'clock.
7 in the morning is a
It's
good
pretty
place to spend
flat, I'll
time.
tell you.
Nice place to be.
Let's move the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's,
Beat it to death. What does the resolution say?
Business as usual,
yes,
basically.
yeah.
So I'm going to read the resolution. Cut
Sure.
through the chase here.
Yeah.
Resolution 2018-10, application number 5220-6-18 SPT. Applicant is Peter Volks, Jr., Adirondack Water Sports Incorporated. The applicant has applied for a permit for a tour boat operation, whereas the Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the application. supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record. And whereas the commission has made a determination that the project is an unlisted action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, 6 NYCRR 617.5, as lead agency for the purposes of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, has made a determination that the project will have no significant impact on the environment, and whereas the action is considered to be a major project pursuant to 6 NYCRR 645-5.3, and public notice has been published and distributed as required, whereas the applicant has demonstrated that the facility complies with the tour boat requirements of 646-1.4D, and whereas the commission finds the project will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, and welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, and will not have alter the essential character of the area in which it is proposed, and will not lead to congestion in the park. Now therefore be resolved, the Lake George Park Commission hereby resolves to approve the above application, provided no substantial.
I'm sorry, Joe, sorry to interrupt you. That's the copy and paste error. It would just be the application as provided.
As provided. So moved.
Second, you've made a motion to approve it as it's written.
Right.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, it's been, now, if anybody wants to make a motion to add an amendment to it, this is the time that it can be done.
Well, I would amend the application to say that we would like, give me some legal ease, Carol.
What do you want to say? There's been a lot of discussion.
I know,
Yeah.
and whether it's, Joe, what do you need that's going to make you comfortable about the hours in Huddle Bay? Anything?
That's up to you.
Okay.
Well, before you make the motion, I'd just like to make a comment that Ken made a very good point, that there's days when there's no activity in Huddle
Right,
Bay
I
all day
understand
long,
that. I understand that.
you know?
That's why I'm trying to put something in here that basically doesn't
It's good
restrict
judgment,
every
that's
minute
all
of
it
every
is.
day in those hours, because if it's flattened in September, then that's fine.
Well, why don't you say the comments
Let me say
that,
this,
the comments that
from-
we had received were from basically Memorial Day to Labor Day. That's when things
Right,
are
exactly.
pretty intense.
That's when his,
So can't you?
that's when his
No, but
business,
in June,
Yeah,
in the
that's
middle of
when
the
he
week,
needs
there's
his
no,
business. That's
there's no
ridiculous.
activity hardly at all in the lake sometimes, in Huddle Bay. I
On
mean,
any
I've been up
day,
there.
on
Right.
any given day.
On any given
Yeah.
day. So, I mean, it's very hard. All
So
we're
we
doing
could
is
say-
encouraging
so
to
let's-
make good
Let me put it
judgment.
this way, Joe. So
gentlemen,
that I would add that we restrict the use of Huddle Bay to hours after 10 o'clock in the morning unless conditions are totally uncrowded. How's that?
You can't.
no,
That's-
no.
No, no,
And
you
then I'll
can't do
delete
it.
the last 5
You
words.
can't make a judgment like
No.
that.
Yeah, that's
That's
arbitrary.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't think you were trying to restrict it to use after 10 o'clock, though. The
No.
way you said it was restricting to use after 10 o'clock. You want to restrict the use after 10
Right.
o'clock.
Right.
But not, as Attorney Meyer said,
Right.
and he made a good point, that it would be the towing, not the entering
Oh, right.
and leaving.
Well, I just assumed that
Gentlemen,
everybody understood that that's
don't
true.
put the burden on the applicant or anybody else to decide whether or not, what the conditions
All
are.
right, then I'll
That's
just,
a
then I'll
ridiculous
just leave it
requirement.
Let's vote on the motion,
Well, I
at 7
Yeah.
to 11, that's that.
Let's vote on the motion.
Let's vote.
As it exists.
as it
Well,
exists.
first, he's already made a motion to amend it to the ski operation only between the hours of 7 and 10 in the morning.
But he
In
had-
the bay.
But he,
Right.
but he didn't get a second, he hasn't had a second on that, so that motion doesn't
There's no
stand
second.
yet.
But that's just 7 to 10 in the morning in Huddle Bay.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
correct.
Right, but he can
Yeah,
go
that's correct.
elsewhere.
You can go out to any time of day or night.
But there's no second. Anybody?
I'll second it, just so we get a
Thanks,
vote
Bruce.
on the motion.
Okay.
So your vote would be on the motion as proposed by Commissioner Cook or on the full motion? What are you voting on?
Just
We're
on the
voting
condition.
on the
On the
amendment to
condition.
add the condition that they only operate within Huddle Bay between the hours of 7 and 10.
Is that a suggestion or an enforcement?
It's a condition.
It's a condition. That
It's
would
a
be-
real
condition.
condition.
It's a condition.
It's enforceable.
No, it's not a suggestion. We're not
Okay.
suggesting how he runs his business.
Been seconded.
So
So
vote.
you call the vote.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the amendment to the motion? Mr. Cook?
Aye.
I'm sorry?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
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 No. Oh,
Oh, yes.
no.
No.
Oh, all right.
Go ahead, Joe. Do it anyway.
Must be the time.
And I'll vote aye for the record, but the motion fails.
Right.
Okay.
So we already have a second for this. Is there any more conditions?
Now we had, I'm going to get to that. Okay. The motion has been made by Mr. Stanek and seconded to accept the application as it's written. Any further discussion?
No.
Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
Yes.
And Joe, how do you say?
No.
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 So it doesn't pass.
It doesn't pass, and that's why I suggested that you think strongly about giving them a chance. By this motion not passing, you're putting them in a difficult position. They have no extension of their permit.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's not good.
That's not good.
That's not good.
No, it's not good because this man is running a good business.
Can I ask a question of the applicant, Mr. Chairman?
Hmm?
May I ask a question of the applicant?
Certainly.
With that restriction that we declined, would your business be operable comfortably? Honest answer.
You couldn't operate your restriction if you were your business, if you were restricted from operating in Huddle Bay from the hours of 10 until 7. You could operate anyplace else but not Huddle Bay.
I can't go to Northwest Bay with some wind.
Sorry?
I can't go to Northwest Bay with a southern wind.
Where you could operate
It's all based on weather.
I think we've made a point.
To the earlier point,
So actually,
it's slightly
We should
overcast.
just, I mean, it's
June and July.
exercising good judgment. Just go ahead and do it.
right.
You're gonna have good water and it's gonna be.
Excuse me. Gentlemen, must be me, but I have a hard time hearing him when other conversations are going on at the table. And I would like this gentleman and his representative to have a chance to say what they're, so would you repeat what you were saying about your business, sir? Or have your attorney take care?
No, I mean, if I'm restricted from, 10 in the morning till 7 at night to go someplace else, then, it depends on what the weather's doing. If I gotta go to all the way to Northwest Bay and there's a southern wind, that's just tons of waves, tons to deal with, when I could just go right to Huddle Bay for a half-hour appointment.
Yeah.
Especially if there's nobody there.
Yeah.
There's days in July where there's not a lot of people out there. Days in June.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but it doesn't help my mind any.
No, it doesn't.
I
It
mean-
doesn't, no, because this is a viable business and he should be allowed to
Well,
operate.
I don't want this guy to go out of business, number one.
What was the count again?
It was
What
5
was-
to 3.
5 to 3, if we had one of the no's say yes, then we'd pass it. And he'd have to make good judgment, is what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
I mean, our goal here is to do what we can do as a commission to be safe. Okay. And is there something that you need to do in Huddle Bay to keep you safe that we haven't talked about?
I mean, to that point, he's used good judgment for the past 15 years.
Right.
There haven't been incidents. He has.
I know, I understand all that, but the conditions have changed in 15 years.
Could,
This isn't 15 years ago, this is today.
Also, you're putting me up for more liability, throwing me in the middle of the lake, in the middle of the afternoon.
Right.
could we put a more restrictive condition somehow that we'll watch it? If we get more complaints, we bring it back.
I'm about to bring that up. You can easily say, as with all permits, we can watch his operation. If we continue to get reports or complaints, depending on what terminology you want to use, that his operation is unsafe within Huddle Bay, then you could look at it again and you can revoke his permit at that time. All permits
Yeah, why don't
are,
we figure
all
out a
permits
way to
are
write
con- are
something
conditional.
more restrictive and
And-
allow
and
them
al-
to
and
stay in
also,
business?
It's possible at this point, you've made your point, commissioners, that they are very concerned about the traffic and the congestion. I think you've put a pretty strong message in the business operator's mind that he has to be cognizant of that when he's operating his business and use good judgment, so he's not causing a problem. At this point, you can easily bring up the motion again, get a second on it, and vote again. You've gone on the record as saying you're extremely concerned about the congestion, and the applicant is well aware of it because he just turned down his application based on those apprehensions. But now you also have the opportunity to go back and vote on it again now that everybody has stated their concerns. One, the way I read it, nobody wants to put this guy out of business. He's run a good business.
Right,
There have been no major complaints. There have been no accidents. There's been no hazards.
But there have been a couple
But
complaints.
at the same time, we're concerned about the increased congestion.
To
Yeah,
that
and
point, you
we
have
can-
the opportunity to grant a shorter term permit with the existing program that he has, like we've done in the past for when chicks look for an expansion within the northern part of that bay, with Mr. Tracy with his tiki boats. You have that opportunity to allow that charter to exist that it currently does today. We take a look at it, and the applicant comes back in front of us for simply an extension of that permit. Since there's been no clearly demonstrated issues aside from the one that Lieutenant Johns mentions, I think as the chairman notes, it's been made abundantly clear to everybody in the room that there's strong concerns out there, and I think the applicant is well aware that he needs to take a really close look at what happens in Huddle Bay. And if he's asked to come back a year from now, I think he's going to be extremely diligent in making sure that he does not add to the problems in Huddle Bay. So perhaps as a recommendation, we might consider approval of the current application with a shorter term, 1 or 2 years, and see how that operates.
I have one short change to that statement. I would say you grant a 5-year permit with the condition that it will be re-examined by the commission at 1 year to allow it to continue. That's a little different. I mean, that would stop him, well, it wouldn't stop him, but it would make sure that he didn't have to go through the entire application process again. In other words, a year from now, they could come before the commission and say, look, this is our operation. Does anybody have more of a discussion rather than limiting him to a 1-year permit? I don't think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
So Carla, procedurally, do we want to go and approve this motion and then add, or should we add the 1 year?
The same motion with a 2-year renewal, a 2-year
The
review.
motion would have a condition on it that the permit is for 5 years. However, the commission will re-examine it at the 1-year interval.
That's fine with
So
me.
when you say the motion, whoever says the motion, just add that condition.
Yeah.
The initial
But
motion.
what are we gonna actually reassess after a year? If his business remains the same, are we gonna, again, go through the same type of assessment where, you know, he's remaining the same and the problem is others, there's more
Well, from
congestion,
a year from
which
now,
we
we're
have no
going
control over.
A year from now, we're going to discuss the same issues we've had today, and if the consensus is that there hasn't been a problem, there isn't a problem, and they've handled it, then nothing changes on his permit.
And if Mr. Volks is as smart as I think he is, he might offer some insight onto what the real problems of Huddle Bay might be.
I have no problem with that.
Well, what about the concerns of the letters that we received, of the people that live there, that get the noise from the minute they wake up in the morning, from 6 a.m. till later on? And the fact that it's not just the congestion, it's the wear and tear on the bay, day in and day out for four straight months. I mean,
But is that just him? I mean, there's
Yeah.
a ton of people.
well,
you have to weigh
but
that when you vote.
these people wrote in regards to this business, not in regards to everything else. Because probably most of the people that are renting from Chick's Marina or going to the Algonquin, they don't ever see the southern end of Huddle Bay. The people that live in there, they're not getting impacted by the clientele from those other two businesses. They are being directly impacted by this water ski business.
Well, I don't think the water ski business makes a lot of noise. The modern boats today are
Well,
pretty
you're right.
quiet.
And the pollution with the four-stroke engines and all that. You're right, except these people that are writing in are pretty adamant about their concerns.
Kathy, almost every controversial, and I'm not belittling
No, I
anybody,
understand.
but it's a common situation where there are people for and against any project, and we've always had. And what we've done here, in my estimation, is make a careful, and that's the job of this commission, make a careful judgment between people who are opposed for it and people who are for it. I mean, I've taken into consideration all those complaints, and so is there, and this happens over and over and over in our controversial project. There's people on both sides of it. I think the answer is, we kind of said, we'll cut the baby in half and give you each half, but the answer is still, you're allowing this gentleman to demonstrate that he can continue to operate a safe business. At the same time, we're putting in a provision to examine it a year from now and not wait 5 years, because nobody knows what the situation. I don't think it's going to get better, but give the guy a chance. We've given other people a chance.
And what will be the criteria that we'll go by when we re-examine this? Will it be letters from
It's
people?
it's the same criteria we go by on every project. It's letters, it's public comments, and that's what you used to make. We have nobody here making.
Comments from Joe?
There's nobody here, there's nobody in this audience that is making a comment opposing this.
Right.
Nobody in this audience. We have letters, and that's normal. And they've all been taken into consideration, which is why we had this discussion.
Joe, you want to?
I just have one question, probably for staff, and that would be, what is the specific criteria in a standard permit that would allow for either a suspension, revocation, or something like that to interrupt a 5-year permit term? I mean, if we're putting a condition in that says we can re-examine and have them come in front of us and re-examine it, but is there something that already that is in there that we can say, listen, you had a safety issue, and we need to re-look at, take another look at this?
I can't recall off the top of my head. I mean, there is, we're looking at these.
Look, wait, gentlemen, we've already hit the mule in the head once here. We've beaten this thing to death. Kathy's point is good. Your point is good about, Jim's point is good about all. I said, we've got a motion to let this guy operate a business. We're going to look at it a year from now. If everybody's going in the Lake George Basin has a chance to come back at any time and say that this is unsafe and this is why. I am certainly, as a matter of fact, I'll make a motion that we amend the basic resolution, which is the only thing on the table, that we will grant the 5-year permit, as most resolution says, with the proviso that we look at it a year from now and to make a judgment at that time.
Okay.
I would second that.
And you can.
So your motion was the resolution, because it wasn't on the table at that point, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, we voted it down.
You voted
so
it
now we
down.
have to put it
So-
back.
Yeah, but I thought he already made
He
it.
had not, he had not.
I'm trying to get him to read it, actually.
Okay, one more time.
You don't have to read it again, just say.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to revisit the motion, the resolution as stated before.
Do we have a second?
Right, a second.
Okay. Now, I would like to put the added condition on the motion that we look at it a year from now.
It's still a 5-year,
It's still a 5-year,
5-year
don't
permit.
change the permit, it's
Right,
still a
okay.
5-year permit. We look at it a year from now.
With a
okay,
1-year
I
review.
second it.
Okay, you seconded that. All in favor of adding that provision to the motion?
Aye.
All right,
Opposed? That's added. Now,
all in favor.
now we are voting on the
He's got
motion
competition.
with the provision that it's looked at a year the application as it was presented is a go for 5 years. Got it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
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 Kathy?
Yes.
You can
Yes.
say no if you want.
Yes.
Such enthusiasm.
Joe?
And the chairman says yes.
Okay,
Well,
There we go.
pass.
Thank you.
I did yes with reservations because I thought Mark had a great question about what kind of criteria will we look at a year from now? We never, so, and when is this all gonna pop up? I mean,
A year
maybe
from
we'll
now.
forget about
A
it.
year from now.
I mean, basic operational procedure is, and it's, when we operate under this charter, we look at all conditions whenever we vote on anything and make an objective decision based on our opinion of whether it's
What's that?
legal, number one, legal, and two, good for the lake.
Joe's fishing charter.
Oh, yeah.
I think we put that one to bed,
I
sir.
think we did.
I think you have your permit for 5 years with the provision that everybody's going to be watching you for a year. There's somebody else sitting in this room that was told that a year ago, too. Okay. Thank you. Turboat application submitted by Justy Joe Charters, Town of Ticonderoga.
So this is an application for a permit and variance. The company is Justy Joe Charters. This vessel is operated by Steve Yaw out of Ticonderoga. Will be berthed at Snug Harbor North, and he proposes to pick up at the Hague steamer dock, as he has for the last 25 some odd years. By operating out of that dock, it's a municipal facility and not a marina, and so it requires a variance from the board for that continued operation. And I believe Mr. Yaw is standing in the back.
I believe the applicant is ready to speak.
I'm going to be way easier than that last guy. We're at the quiet end of the
Morning, Steve.
First of all, I'm 63, retired from law enforcement for 20 years, been doing the guiding for 25, since 1993. Nothing has changed. We don't see any boats up there till noon. We don't even see patrol boats till noon, because it's so quiet. Everything's been the same, nothing's changed. Have the same boat, same routine. If anybody got any questions, I can answer fishing questions over secretive.
Is Bolton okay with you picking up at the municipal dock?
It's
Or
Hague.
Tom Hague? Yeah.
That's what their dock is for. It's a
Okay,
public dock.
good.
The Mohican,
Yeah.
those boats.
I know
put in
that, yeah.
there. It's a public dock. I just had a grant from the state a few years ago to totally redo it for handicap accessibility.
Great.
That's who we don't pick up all the time, but 90% of the time we pick up there.
Yep, good.
And you have permission from the town of Hague to do that?
Yes, sir.
Any further questions?
You promise to stay out of Huddle Bay?
I'll tell you something right now. I'm sorry we're going to blow our cover here. I have many clients that come from this end of the lake, and they get on the boat, and they go, "Are we in Lake George?" It's like 11 o'clock, we've seen one other boat.
It's different.
It's totally night and day.
North of the Narrows, it's a different.
I will not, I don't go any farther than Hewlett, there's too much gas, it's too much expensive.
Thank you, sir. Any,
Hear from you asked a lot of good questions. Nothing?
okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? Joe?
Resolution
This is
2018-11.
Joe.
Application number 1548-2-18 SPT. Applicant is Steve Yaw, Justy Joe's Fishing Charter. The applicant has applied for a permit for tour bore operation. The Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the application, supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record. And whereas the commission has made a determination that the project is an unlisted action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act 6 NY CRR 617.5, and as lead agency for the purposes of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, has made a determination that the project will have no significant impact on the environment, And whereas the action is considered to be a major project pursuant to 6 NYCRR 645-5.3, and public notice has been published and distributed as required. Whereas the applicant has demonstrated the facility complies with the tour boat requirements of 646-1.4D, except as noted below. And whereas the applicant has requested a variance from 6 NYCRR 646-1.4D to B. Tour boats shall be operated from properly permitted marina facilities. And whereas the applicant has demonstrated that the strict conformance with the regulation will cause no unnecessary hardship due to the unique and peculiar circumstances which impose substantial financial, technical, and safety burdens. And whereas the Commission finds that there is no reasonable possibility that the applicant's business will bring a reasonable return following conformance with the regulation. Whereas the Commission finds the project will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, or welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, and will not alter the essential characters of the area in which it is proposed, and will not lead to congestion in the park. Now therefore be resolved, the Lake George Park Commission hereby resolves to approve the above application, provided no substantive adverse comments are received prior to the close of the public comment period. So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the application as read. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. You were lots more simple.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks for being easy.
Yeah. Next application is to modify an existing wharf, and it's submitted by McPaulton, Town of Bolton. Joe?
That one's mine. That's actually a typo. It's to modify an existing wharf and mooring. And this is an application by Christina McPartland. And both the dock and the mooring require a variance, and that's why she's here. This is located in Boone Bay in the town of Bolton. And there's our applicant.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you. Just for the record, yeah, you just have to state your name and stuff for the
Yes.
record, that's all. Thank you.
I am Christina McFarland.
Okay.
I'm here today with my husband, Peter, and our son Bill is also with us today. We're here for the variance request for the dock and mooring in Boone Bay. As a little background, we were able to purchase our property at 4224 Lakeshore Drive in 2003 after about 20 years of sailing in Lake Champlain on Willsboro Bay. Our sailboat came along with us to start to explore Lake George, and we bought our motorboat, our bow rider, here on the lake at Boats by George. We certainly feel fortunate to have a home on Lake George. It's become a gathering place for our large family, with our kids and grandkids learning to respect the lake and its beauty while learning how to swim and sail and cruise. Our original dock was a T-shaped 66.5 long stake dock, and all of that is in your packet. I have a couple of photos from that time frame that I did not include that show the original dock and the boats at the dock, if you would like to see those. We were found to be out of compliance in 2017. The order of consent asked us to move the dock back to the original 66.5 foot length. So we changed the dock then to an L shape because we wanted to move the boat to the other side. It was in between the T, beyond the T, and we felt like we didn't have enough depth. So we moved the boat to the outside, changed it to an L, installed whips on the north side to accommodate the motorboat to mitigate any wave action, and moved the dock in and moved the mooring in as much as possible. Subsequent to filing for the variance for the mooring, Molly contacted us and said we also needed a variance for the dock, which we didn't think we did originally, but that was based on the newest survey measurements, which showed the mean low water mark at 21, by your notes, 21 feet. So we're asking to remain at that 66.5 roughly measurement where we were before. We provided some information again in the packet that shows other docks, swim platforms, moorings, and things in our area and some of them are beyond the regulations. So we feel like we're certainly in the character of Boone Bay and the surrounding areas. And I do have a few more photos with me if you would like to see those. A few weeks ago, we discovered we had major damage to our dock and shoreline. Some of you who may have visited the site probably saw that. Again, I have photos of that. Since we need to construct or repair our dock in a major way, we made a few modifications to the dock you saw on the application. It doesn't bring the dock out any further, but we did make the width of the walkway a little bit wider. We widened it to 6 feet and then out to 8 feet to accommodate Peter's mobility challenges. And right now I've been researching docks and builders to find an appropriate replacement for our dock. Yesterday, there was another issue that came up. Molly contacted us and said there were more comments from one of our neighbors. It was another declaration of restrictions, covenants, and conditions that apparently supersedes the one we presented to you in our packet. We had never seen the document before, so because of the lack of time to determine whether it's binding, and since Devin Dickinson was the person we had asked to originally research the first declaration that we got, we asked him to give us some opinion on it from a survey perspective. He says essentially in his opinion the proposal complies with the restriction that's stated in the document, even though we know that's not a legal opinion and we haven't had time to follow up with our attorney. So I asked Devin to actually put that, show that on the shoreline survey, and I also have some copies of that for you as well. In closing, I'd just like to say that I was reading a 2015 recreation study that described the lake as a tale of two lakes, and we witness that from our porch every time we're there. The tranquility of our bay, Boone Bay, in the foreground, and the hustle and bustle of the larger lake in the distance. We love the lake. We hope our family can enjoy it for generations. Not having boats would be devastating for us. We do look forward to working with you and with the other agencies who are stewards of the lake. And we want to continue to try to accommodate our neighbors as well, as much as we can, while also ensuring the enjoyment of the lake for all of us. I'm open to any questions you might have for me, and I can show you those items if you would like to see them.
Commissioners, do you have any questions?
Did you always have the stern of the boat, the sailboat, tied to the dock?
We did. Well, when we first got there initially, the very first year when we put it out there, it wasn't tied back. And we did have a complaint from a neighbor.
Right.
And that's what prompted us to begin to tie it back. And also, I think the dock might have been a little bit wider too. We actually shortened up the dock as well to try to accommodate that complaint. And then I believe the Park Commission came out and looked at that and said that would be fine.
Okay.
And that's what we continue to do.
Any further questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Would you like to see any of those other
Yeah, I'd like to.
I think we've seen all.
Well, I mean, I've got a lot. Is there anything else that was not in the packet, original packet?
Well, I brought extra pictures.
Oh.
So if you wanted to see those, but also I brought the material to address the 60-40 split that our neighbor presented to you.
Yeah.
So I have that as well.
I think I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was the proposal I saw? It was 6 feet to 8 feet, is it?
Walking out the pier.
Yeah.
We have a 4-foot dock.
Right,
as
but
it
the
was
proposal,
right here.
the proposal said 6 feet
Right.
to 8 feet. Is that still what you're requesting?
Yes,
Okay.
when we spoke with Molly, she said, if you want to make any adjustments, now's the time to do it.
Right.
Because you can always go a little smaller, so you want to present, everything here.
Right.
And we can work, if things are approved, then we can work in-house with the
Right.
permits and things eventually.
Okay,
So that is our wish list, if you will,
okay,
to make it
That's
a little
fine.
bit wider, not bigger.
yeah.
What's the draft of your boat?
I'm sorry,
The draft of your boat? Is it a full keel,
sailboat?
swing keel?
it's a fixed keel.
It's five
And
feet.
Fixed keel, draft is 5 feet.
It says 5 feet.
5 feet in the proposal.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
And the motorboat is, with the draft down, it's 39 inch.
Right, 3 feet.
So we had damage to the rudder of the boat. I have a picture of us when we, in the beginning, when we pulled it up, we would pull it to the dock to get people on, but we haven't been able to do that in several years. So we use the dinghy to go out to the boat.
Any further questions? Thank you. Anybody else in the audience to make a comment? Sir? Oh, John. Greetings.
Thank you for your record. My name is John Salvador. I note here in your agenda that this application is to modify an existing wharf. And existing is spelled with a capital E. That has real significance with respect to your regulations. By what criteria does this wharf qualify as an existing wharf? Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't know you put a capital E on it.
Is that a typo or is that a legal term?
Is that why it's a grandfather? Oh, okay.
Okay. Maybe it should say pre-existing.
It's just an agenda. It's just on the agenda.
Yeah, that's just the agenda. That's just the agenda, John.
I'm sorry?
That's just the agenda, John. It's not the actual application. Okay?
The resolution has it as a small e.
Any further? I asked, well, John, is there anybody else that wants to speak on this? No. Any comments from the commissioner on this application? Commissioners, rather than go around one by one. My only comment is we only received one comment, one adverse comment, and that concerned a deed restriction that might preclude us granting a permit. And it's always been my understanding, and council confirms it, that we're not a civil court here. All of our permits are granted with the proviso that they conform with existing town, other governmental regulations, deed restrictions or not. If there is a deed restriction that somebody else wants to bring up, then it is a civil matter and not a matter before this court, before this commission. The only thing that we're interested in is whether or not it satisfies our regulations and our concept of what is good and bad for Lake George. Does anybody have any questions on that? Therefore, Joe, I ask you to read the resolution.
Resolution 2018-12. Application number 5220-18-18 dock and 5220-19-18 for the mooring. Applicant is Christina McPartland. Whereas the applicant has applied for a permit to modify existing dock to result in a 67.8 foot long, 24.7 foot wide L-shaped dock and modify the location of an existing mooring. Whereas the Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the application, supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record. And whereas the commission has made a determination pursuant to 6 NY-CRR 645-3.6 and the State Environmental Quality Review Act 6 NY-CRR 617.5, that the project is a Type 2 action, does not require further review of potential environmental impacts pursuant to this act. Whereas the action is considered to be a minor project pursuant to 6 NY-CRR 645-5.3, public notice has been published and distributed. Whereas the applicant has requested a variance from 6 NY-CRR 1.1C. Number 2, the dock or wharf shall be constructed so as to exceed the following offshore distance criteria. Number 1I, no dock or wharf may extend offshore for more than 40 feet beyond the mean low water mark where the wharf intersects the mean low water mark. And number 3I, no dock or wharf or mooring shall be constructed or placed so as to extend offshore more than 100 feet from the mean high water mark. And number 12, moorings shall be placed so that the vessels moored to them at the full swing of their mooring or anchor line will be no closer than 20 feet to the projection of the property lines extended into the lake along the axis of the property lines as they intersect the lake, or line extended at the right angle to the mean high water mark, whichever results in a greater setback. Mooring shall not be placed so that the full swing of the vessel extends more than 100 feet offshore from the mean high water mark. Whereas the applicant has demonstrated that strict conformance with the regulations will cause unnecessary hardship due to unique, peculiar circumstances which impose substantial financial, technical, and safety burdens. The Commission finds that there's no reasonable possibility that the applicant's property will bring a reasonable return following conformance with the regulation. And whereas the Commission finds that the project represents the minimum necessary variance required to alleviate the hardship. Whereas the Commission finds the project will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, or welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, will not alter the essential character of the area in which it is proposed, will not lead to congestion in the park, and will not have an undue visual, cultural, or audible impact on the neighborhood or the park. Now therefore be resolved that the Lake Shores Park Commission hereby approves the request for variance and approves the above application so as proposed. So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the application as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Final project before the commission is a request for to modify oh, wait, this is not the final. I don't want to Lake George Association. Yeah, that's no one down the line. Anyway, the Munzenmeyer, Town of Queensbury. Forgive me if I didn't do that right.
That's okay. We'll forgive you.
Yes.
Just 1 second. You guys have anything you want to say about this application?
The Munzenmeyer's
Oh,
can
have
go
at it.
ahead.
Hello. Good morning. Hi, my name is Lisa Munzenmeyer. I'm here with my husband, Charlie. So a few things we just want to share with you. There's a lot of information that was shared in the packet. But first off, my husband, Charlie, and myself, we are 20-year residents of Lake George. We live here year-round. We brought our daughter up here. She went to Lake George schools from kindergarten through graduation. Learned to swim on Lake George. And so we are the proud owners. We own we have 2.6 acres on Lake George. We are adjacent to the Harris Bay Yacht Club, so we share a property line with them. And we have 157 feet of shoreline. That's what we purchased 20 years ago. Our current dock is in pretty bad disrepair. It's about 30 years old, so it definitely needs to get replaced. And we're now at a point where our daughter's graduated college, where we want to be able to enjoy the lake in a way that would allow us to. Yeah, she graduated college. We paid for all that, so we're good. Anyway, so what we wanted to share with you is that our location of our property is very unique in that, one, we are the last house on the bay. We have the depth of the water is very shallow. So at the lowest point, I think we measured it at 36 inches. So it's pretty shallow, and our current dock is 86 feet long. So it's a pier dock, and it's 86 feet long. And that was there before we purchased the home, and that's because of the shallowness of the lake, of where we reside. We also, the original configuration of the dock is set based on how, where we are in the location. And so I think some of you came out and saw, I know it wasn't out because of the ice, we still haven't been able to put the dock out. It's currently brought in, so you weren't able to see the full depth of the length of the dock. So one of the other things that we wanted to share with you is that the overall process, we've met a number of times with Molly, with Dave as well, and part of that process is what our original ask was, is we wanted to actually have an E-shaped dock, because we do have 2 boats and we wanted to be able to have them under cover. But because of some of the regulations with the wetlands, because we do have wetlands that we share with the Harris Bay Yacht Club, so as a result, Molly suggested that we contacted APA. So we did. APA came out to our property, they surveyed it, they've marked it, and they actually not only on the land, but they also went out onto the water. So they did that last September. And as part of that survey, some of the things that are in the letter that they wrote to us, they actually came back and have identified what I call the sweet spot in front of our home where we can build a dock. We will not impact, in their text it says, the proposed project will not affect the wetlands. The APA does not require a permit or a variance, and the property is not located in a statutory critical environmental area. So what we're looking to do is, because we have that 157 feet, we want to build a U-shaped dock that would essentially, we would use the current footprint. We're not extending any further out into the lake than we currently are. We will use that current footprint. We will not, and in fact, we're reducing the dock from 7 foot wide. It's currently 7 feet wide. We're reducing it to 5 feet in width. And so our current dock is 602 square feet in length. Our proposed dock would be 664 square feet, so adding 62 feet of square feet of dockage, obviously plus the deck. I think one of the other things for me was listening to the conversations you had on the first applicant about the congestion in the lake. We have seen that significant in the 20 years we've been there. The congestion in the lake for Harris Bay is gotten considerably higher, particularly with boats parking out in the lake. So one of the things that we've found ourselves doing is we don't go out on the lake that much. And so we would really like to have a place where we can enjoy the lake, and this boat deck dock would really help us to enjoy the lake. One other note, I should also mention we have a 1956 Woody, which we haven't put in the lake in years because it really needs protection. So that's one of the things that we want to do is provide some protection to that boat. Anything else on this?
If you want, we have the aerial pictorial view of Harris Bay and what the impact or change would be.
So if you can see this is the area view of this little pink thing. If you can even look further, this little white dot, that's the impact. So that visually, I mean, it's not exactly to scale because I did it myself. But I just want you to see that little white dot, if you can see underneath this sticky, is essentially what we're looking at.
Yeah, it fits within the character coordinates, both the north side and the opposite side.
Yeah, so, and that was the other thing, yes, and that's a good point, is that the vast majority of our neighbors all have these boat decks. So we would not be out of character with the community. There would be no impact because we're at the last house in the bay. So we don't get a lot of boat traffic. We mostly get fishermen that come and try to catch the little fish to go catch the bigger fish. So.
Commissioners, do you have any questions?
And I said that was the last thing, but I lied. So here's one more thing that I'll also say, is that because we are the last house on the bay, we also, and I think some of you that came out and saw, we get a lot of the debris from both the summer and the winter people that take advantage of the lake. So we're constantly cleaning up and getting rid of all the debris that comes out into our part of the bay. So.
Any questions from the commissioners or the applicant? Doesn't look like it at this time. Any further comments from any other member of the audience? John?
Basically the same question as I had in the previous application with respect to the capital E on existing. However, I would like to rephrase my question. By what authority is the commission granting a modification to this existing wharf? By what legal criteria does this wharf qualify as existing with a capital E? Thank you.
The way I look at it, you look at the agenda, every word is capitalized in it except words like of and the. So I don't think, I think it's semantics. I don't think it's a legal question.
How about the legal authority to classify this as an existing wharf?
The commission has the authority to classify it as an existing wharf because you have the authority over Lake George, and it's in your regulations.
And a pre-existing wharf, even if it wasn't there right now, is the same thing, basically.
It is the same thing.
Okay. John? Any other questions by the commissioners at this time?
I'm looking at the map, I just would like a clarification. It shows on the map with the proposed dock, wetlands in one line closer to the shore, and then it shows wetlands again on the other side of the dock. Is this between?
Yes.
There are wetlands to either side of you?
The marine biologist from the APA came out and threw a rake on all the sides of our dock. And her drawing shows that this is our area of opportunity between those two lines, on the shore side and the opposite side of our roof.
So what that means, he's vegetation on either side to classify it as a water wetland?
The opposite side of the Harris Bay.
Right.
The fish spawn there,
Right.
on the side of our dock. And the other side, she found some growth.
If you come into Harris Bay, I mean, it's a bay. There's lots of vegetation growing and so.
But the result is that there's no jurisdiction from the Adirondack Park Agency because there's no wetland that being impacted. Right?
Yeah. Staff, the APA has determined, just for the record, how much of this, what is it, 155 or 157 feet, how much of it is wetland?
Correct.
And that determination and that definition of the lake frontage is still in existence. In other words, that's the existing definition that is wetland.
Yes.
According to the APA.
Right.
And I guess I'll put you further on the spot too. According to our regulations, does wetland count towards total lake frontage?
No. So you have to subtract the wetland.
Okay, so it doesn't count towards your total lake frontage.
Right.
I wish they could convince the tax assessor of that.
Amen.
Yeah. Okay. So the question here, and just so we don't get confused sometimes where we're going, is the total amount of lake frontage versus a U-shaped dock, which is the request, according to what I'm reading.
Right, and we wouldn't be in this situation if you counted the wetlands.
Well, there's also the offshore distance.
Oh, but that's, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Shallow,
still a variance because it's offshore.
Yeah,
A
okay.
violation.
Right.
And the next question we have to face is financial justification for this, and versus was it self-inflicted or out in all those? You're all familiar with that. Does anybody have any comments they want to make on this?
Yeah, they bought the house. The dock that they possessed was the original location, and they've utilized that for years. Oftentimes, in order to preserve our investment, we have to upgrade, put a new kitchen in once in a while, build a new dock. If you're going to build a new dock, why not improve the dock to something you really want? You don't put the old refrigerator back in the kitchen. The fact that the wetlands are a limit their, by our definition, usage seems to me terribly unfair. They've got 350 boats docked less than 100 yards away, and I've been there. I was there, I guess it was last year when we went there on the neighborhood project, and this keeps within their neighborhood. I mean, they have no sight view problems to the south side, and it would improve anybody looking at them from the north side, in my opinion.
Okay, so your point, part of your point. One, there's no question, according to the regulations as they exist, that this requires a variance for a couple of reasons. However, you feel that I'm just trying to clarify what you said.
I appreciate it.
You feel that the wetlands is an unfair imposition on the applicant this time. I might add that your final determination on this project also hinges on the impact on the lake. And that hasn't even been mentioned in the application, but that's our golden rule is this a detriment to the lake in any way? Does it harm the lake in any way to grant this variance?
Yeah. Well, I would submit that, obviously the not counting the wetland as lake frontage was an effort by the Park Commission in their definition and their regulations to, look after the ecology of the lake. And it was based on the premise that if it's APA mapped or delineated wetland, then it needs to be protected. The APA themselves, though, said there's no jurisdiction here, meaning that there is no impact, direct or indirect, to that wetland from this project. So the intent, I think, is met.
Yes, I agree with you totally that, we have these regulations and they state such and such, but our purpose is to decide whether or not this is detrimental, and there's no question under regulations it needs an exemption or a variance from that proviso. Our job as commissioners is to find these exemptions if they exist, because that's the only reason we sit here. If the staff wants to run this place back and as we said often, black and white on the rules, then you don't need a commission. So our judgment is to what's good for the lake and what's fair to the applicant and so forth. So I'm willing to forget the fact that it's the distance about showing. What I'm more concerned with is whether or not it's good for the lake, and number two, have they satisfied the reason why they have to do this? In other words, how bad is it? I agree with what Mr. Parker said, that they bought this the way it exists, but we all buy houses too the way they exist, and we have to do things to them to maintain our investment. And that was a good point. I never thought of using that excuse to bypass the hardship requirement.
I'm just.
You mean the reasoning?
The reasoning.
Okay.
I've never quite followed that reasoning. But you can make that argument.
Let me introduce you to Joe Common Sense.
Anybody else have anything they want to say about this project? There obviously is nobody else in the audience that is concerned about it, and to the best of my knowledge, and I asked staff this, to the best of my knowledge, none of the neighbors have had anything to say detrimental one way or the other about this, have they? No. Okay.
Resolution 2018-13, application number 5234-7-18, dock modification. Applicant is Lisa and Charles Muntz-Muller. The applicant has applied for a permit to modify an existing dock to result in a 90.6 long and 24-foot wide U-shaped wharf with an open side boat cover sun deck. And whereas the Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the application, supporting documents, comments received, other information which appears in the record, and the commission has made a determination pursuant to 6 NY CRR 645-3.6 and the State Environmental Quality Review Act 6 NY CRR 617.5 that the project is a type 2 action, does not require further review of potential environmental impacts pursuant to this act. And whereas the action is considered to be a minor project pursuant to 6 NY CRR 645-5.3. Public notice has been published and distributed, and whereas the applicant has requested a variance from 6 NY CRR 646-1.1C. Number 2, no dock or wharf shall be constructed so as to exceed the following offshore distance criteria. Number I, no dock or wharf may extend offshore for more than 40 feet beyond the mean low water mark, where the wharf intersects the mean low water mark. And number 7, the maximum number of dock and wharfs or moorings permitted per lakefront lot or parcel shall be limited as follows. 45 to 65 feet of lakefront, 1 dock or wharf constructed as a straight pier. A minimum of 45 feet is required for the construction of the wharf. Whereas the applicant has demonstrated strict conformance with the regulation and caused no unnecessary hardship due to the unique, peculiar circumstance which impose financial, technical, or safety burdens. And whereas the commission finds that there is no unreasonable possibility that the applicant's property will bring a reasonable return following conformance with the regulation. Whereas the commission finds that the project represents the minimum necessary variance required to alleviate the hardship. And whereas the commission finds that the proposed project is reasonable and necessary, will not cause unreasonable, uncontrollable, or unnecessary damage to the natural resources of the state, including soils, forests, water, fish, shellfish, crustaceans, and adequate aquatic and land-related environment. And whereas the commission finds the project will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, or welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, will not alter the essential characters of the area which is proposed, will not lead to congestion in the park, and will not have an undue visual, cultural, audible, or impact on the neighborhood or the park. Now therefore we resolve that the Lake George Park Commission hereby approves the request for variance and approves the above application as proposed. So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve the application as read. Any discussion?
I'm voting for it because Harris Bay is such a mess, you couldn't mess it up if you tried.
It's okay, Council.
That's going to be a tough record to follow.
You need water?
Hey, we just got a whole new reason to discuss something.
The judge says strike that from the record.
The audience will disregard the last remark?
Yes.
Yeah, no further comments. All in favor?
Aye.
No,
Opposed?
I am opposed.
You have a comment?
Yes, I do have a comment. I just think that.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to vote no on this. I'm not.
Well, that's all right.
Okay.
Yeah,
If
that's
you
all
want
right.
me to tell you why,
Yeah.
that's fine. If you don't, that's fine
Yeah,
too.
you don't have to tell us ahead of time. Roll call vote.
Hey,
Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
Yes.
And the chairman says yes.
Carrie.
Okay.
Okay.
okay, Walter, you're right.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Good luck.
Okay. Good luck. And just for the record, Michelle, the commission acknowledged that the wetlands are the determinant on lake frontage. What we are doing is granting a variance to that requirement for lake frontage because of extenuating circumstances.
Welcome back.
Lake George Association.
So this is an application for a variance for a tour boat permit, similar to Mr. Yaw earlier. This is a tour boat that's operated from a municipal dock in the village of Lake George, not a marina, so required a variance from that requirement. And while
Wonderful.
Thank you, Commissioner. The Lake George Association has been operating the floating classroom on Lake George for many years. In the most recent 10 or so years, on a custom-made 40-foot catamaran docked at the village docks off Lower Amherst Street in Lake George. We would like to be able to continue that operation, comply with the new tour boat permit process, and I'm here to answer any questions.
The tour boat application is for the only tour boat operation that has never had a complaint. It's a great job, Walt. You do a great job.
Does this include both boats?
No, this is just for the floating classroom, the catamaran. We'll come before the commission again for the Elko.
That'll be a separate.
Any questions? I don't think there are any questions. Thank you, Walt. Anybody in the audience?
Talk longer if you want. We're happy.
Anybody in the audience want to make a comment?
Stay out of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any discussion?
Resolution 2018-14, application number 5222-11-18 SPT. Applicant is Lake George Association. Whereas the applicant has applied for a permit for a tour board operation, the Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the application, supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record. And whereas the Commission has made a determination that the project is an unlisted action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, 6 NY-CRR 617.5, and as lead agency for the purposes of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, has made it determined that the project will have no significant impact on the environment. Whereas the action is considered to be a major project pursuant to 6 NY-CRR 645-5.3, and public notice has been published and distributed as required. The applicant has demonstrated that the facility complies with the tour boat requirements of 646-1.4D, except as noted below. And whereas the applicant has requested a variance from 6 NY-CRR 646-1.4D to the tour boats shall be operated from properly permitted marina facilities. Whereas the applicant has demonstrated that strict conformance with the regulation will cause unnecessary hardship due to unique, peculiar circumstances which has imposed substantial financial, technical, and safety burdens. Whereas the Commission finds that there is no reasonable possibility that the applicant's business will bring a reasonable return following conformance with the regulation. And whereas the Commission finds that the project will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, or welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, will not alter the essential character of the area in which it is proposed, will not lead to congestion in the park. Now therefore be resolved that Lake George Park Commission hereby resolves to approve the above application provided notes as provided and notes as proposed.
So moved?
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the application by the Lake George Association for the continuance of their tour boat operation. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. That is the end of the actual applications before the Commission today. The next item on the agenda is Tiki Tours, and while this application has been made, it is not officially before the Commission today. This is for discussion purposes only, and just for your advice, the Commission won't get into a general question and answer discussion on this application until it's actually in front of us, but we're open to hearing all you have to say.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to come before you. Obviously, Greg Teresi on behalf of Tiki Tours, along with one of our managers from last summer, Dylan Pasco. Last year, you granted us a provisional one-year temporary permit to operate 2 tiki boats out of the Lake George Beach Club. Last year, the application was to run them out of the lake village docks. In the operations last year, we quickly learned that really wasn't all that practical. So this year, we're back before you requesting that we can operate out of the Lake George Beach Club. Last year, we were granted 2 boats, charter boats. Those are 2 tiki-style boats. This year, we'd like to operate at least one additional I'd say tiki style, although it's the same octagon shaped boat, same configuration, manufacturer, but it does have a cedar shaped roof as opposed to thatching. There's no bamboo on it. It's cedar in nature. It's what we call the Adirondack boat. And we're also actively looking, although at the time that I submitted the application, we were under contract to buy a lineman. That fell through, so we're back on the hunt for another boat. Last year we operated about 300 charters, a little less than 300, a little more than 300 charters, and we had a pretty good response, we thought, from the public. There are a lot of people that have contacted us this year interested in getting back out there. One of the complaints that we had was the boats don't go fast enough and we don't go far enough, which is why we contemplated at the addition of either a lineman style boat or we even thought about maybe doing a pontoon style boat just to try to get the customer out to wherever it is that they want to go on the lake. So the application is twofold. It's one for a tour boat permit to operate the 4 boats, as well as a Class A marina modification for the Lake George Beach Club to add 2 more charter boats to their list. My understanding in communicating with Lieutenant Johns is there were 3 complaints last year, which obviously I'm not happy about. The one was related to noise that was coming off of the boat, and it was pulled up to a private dock. I've addressed that with my captains last year. I plan to address it with them again this year. Unfortunately, I don't know when that actually occurred and what time, so I can't pin a particular captain and say, hey, you're done, or give me a good reason as to why that happened. The other 2 complaints, one was a resident had seen somebody, I believe, in the water off the ladder of the boat, and the allegations that they appeared to be urinating in the water. We do have porta potties, as most of you saw when you came on the boats last year. Our captains instruct the passengers before they leave, hey, look, there's restrooms that you can use at the beach club, or restrooms that you can use at the village, public restrooms. So we do try to make that accommodation available and do encourage people to use them. The last complaint was that somebody was disrobing. I don't know to what extent, if they were changing into a bathing suit or what have you. And again, I don't know the date and the time that these occurred. But obviously, those are the concerns that I have going into this next season. Those are concerns that I would address with my captains. I plan to show them the complaints and say, hey, look, this is a high-traffic area. There's a lot of boats in this area. There are a lot of eyes that are watching how you guys operate these boats, and ultimately, the captain's responsible. We're going to hold them to the high standards that we did last year. We did let go a couple of guys who were not necessarily falling in line with the way that our expectations came as far as captaining the boats. And we're hopeful. We've got a lot of guys coming back this year and ladies coming back this year that did do a good job for us, and hopefully we can do it again in the future. So I just wanted the opportunity. I've still got to go before the town, or the village rather, site plan review, which I believe is the reason that I couldn't get on this agenda. I did meet with them last week, much like this board, just to get their concerns and get a better understanding, and it sounds like that's heading in the right direction, so I'm hopeful that when I come before you next month that we'll have the approval from the village.
Thank you, Greg.
Yes, sir.
Any comments that any commissioners want to make? We're not going to get into a question and answer back and forth situation.
Understood.
Yeah.
The only thing that I'd ask is, it'd be great to have feedback from the board of, I did talk to the mayor. He didn't receive any complaints, but obviously you folks are in the community talking to people about what's happening on the lake. I'd you know, if there was feedback that you had thought of over the last summer, I'd love to know what it is. We're trying to make it a better business, trying to make it more accommodating for the visitors of the lake.
The only feedback I know about is the one that was in the comments mentioned in the application. If anybody, I don't, and you've already addressed those.
Yes, sir.
Whether or not they'll become more of a discussion during the application, I'm not making a call on that right now, but you're already aware.
Prepared to take the heat. Like
Yeah.
I said, I'm not happy about 3 complaints. I was hoping for no complaints.
But your application will reflect the keeping of 3, possibly 4 boats at the Lake George Beach Club,
Yes, sir.
permanently, quote unquote, I mean, you know.
To operate 3, possibly 4 boats out of the lake.
Let's limit it to the 3 that you're talking about, forget the 4th one. So they'll be there overnight, you'll start your business day with them there, finish your business day with them there?
The 2 of them will be there full-time. The one, I guess it would depend on the demand. That's my business partner's personal vessel, although it is PB approved. His stance on it is if the demand is there, and last year we did see the demand. Last year, if you remember, we did make the pitch to try to get that 3rd boat. So I'm anticipating that the demand will be there, in which case it will be there.
So 2 boats would go out, and theoretically one would come over from Dark Bay and accommodate the business?
Correct. But in the event, you know, in talking with Jose at the beach club, you know, I want the ability to be able to keep it there full-time in the event that it is, you know, the demand is higher. I don't know.
That's a busy spot. Is there space enough there to keep your boats there?
Yes, so the plan, he's got 2 dock slips that are allocated to him. Our plan is to take the northernmost slip. We did get a sign off from the village because we do encroach on their property line with the pier. So we keep the 2 tiki boats. 2 of the tiki boats would go on the northern side of that dock, and then the alternate, either a wooden boat or a pontoon boat on the southern side of that northern dock, and the other tiki boat as well. I believe the span, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I do have to update the map, and we'll plan to, I've got Matt Steves working on that, so we'll show the layout of where the boats are going to go. But there does appear to be enough room.
I think that's it, sir.
All right.
Thank you, Greg.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the seeker determination concerning the administrative building and visitors interpretive center. Before we discuss it,
This is.
would you like to say
I'm sorry.
something, Carla, as to why this is necessary?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. As the commission is aware, we've been working towards the demolition and construction of a new office building for the Park Commission, basically at the same location, within 20 feet or so of the same location on Fort George Road. The new administrative building will also have a visitors interpretation center to go along with the battlefield that DEC runs and on which the administrative building is located. Back in November, at your November meeting, the commission declared itself lead agency under seeker. The involved and interested agencies were all provided with their necessary lead agency letters, and there were no other agencies that wanted lead agency or opposed to the commission acting as lead. So the commission as lead agency is the public authority to determine seeker. In order to do that, for the past few months since November, there have been many studies done, most recently archaeological studies, very complete 1A, 1B, 2 studies to determine whether there's any archaeological issues. There's been communications with all of the various involved agencies. And at this point, all the information is before the board, and it's this time that the board can, or the commission can issue a determination under seeker. In order to do that, what you have before you is the Part 2 and Part 3 of the full environmental assessment form. And you've all had a chance to review that, it's my understanding. And what I would ask is that if the board desires, we can go through each and every one of the 10 pages of the full EAF we have before you. Or, if you'd like, it has been all filled out and proposed. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If there are any changes, obviously it's the commission's prerogative to do that. Or, Mr. Chairman, if it's the prerogative of the commission, you can just adopt Part 2 as is, having gone through and taken a hard look at it, and make a determination.
I have one, comment or question.
Okay?
Should we approve this today?
Yes.
It's still subject to amendment at a future date if something unforeseen arrives.
Of course. In the event that there is something that comes from some agency that we don't anticipate, we have everything that legally we need to have in order to go through it and adopt a declaration. We don't anticipate from any other conversations with any of the state agencies any negative feedback or anything that would change the decision. But in the event it does, this can be revisited and amended at the May meeting. And I was remiss, Mr. Chairman, one of the reasons to go forward in doing this also is that the APA is, we have to amend the unit management plan for the battlefield for this building, which staff has been doing and Mr. Wick has been doing. The APA at its meeting last week, I believe, or the week before, has sent that out for public comment, and we'll be moving on that, the adoption of that, at its June meeting. But in order to look at it at its June meeting, seeker needs to be complete. We just need to have all our boxes checked.
Right. Thank you. I agree with council and staff that we need to keep this thing moving along. I see, since we are the lead agency and we have the authority to approve this, I see no reason why we can't. And also, there's always, if something unforeseen arrives, there's always a chance to change it, but nothing gets off the ground without taking the first step. And this is the first step of about 100 first steps. So, with that said, I would like the Vice Chairman to read a resolution approving, and I also ask, does anybody here have any questions about the questions that were on this form, in other words?
The Part 2.
The Part 2. Okay. You're on.
Going forth. Resolution number 2816, I'm not quite sure. Subject, resolution determining no significant impact in issuing a negative declaration under SEQR for the Lake George Park Commission Office Facility and Battlefield Park Visitors Interpretive Center. Whereas the Lake George Park Commission, hereinafter referred to as the Commission, is proposing the construction of a new office building on the site of its current facility, replacing the existing building and incorporating into the building a new Lake George Battlefield Park Visitors Interpretive Center, the action and, excuse me, I put a candy in my mouth when I shouldn't have. Whereas the Commission must evaluate all proposed actions submitted to it for its consideration that may affect the environment in light of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, known as SEQRA, and the regulations promulgated thereunder, and whereas by Resolution 2017-70, adopted on November 21st, 2017, the Commission adopted a resolution binding the project to be a Type 1 action as that term is defined in Section 6 NYCRR 617.2 and 617.4, further named itself lead agency for the purpose of SEQR. And whereas no interested or involved parties objected to the Commission's desire to serve and act as the lead agency for the purposes of SEQR, and whereas the Commission has taken a hard look at the project and examined and completed Part 2 of the full environmental assessment form, Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners that the proposed project will not have a significant adverse effect on the environment for the reasons set forth in the attached notice of determination of non-significance, and be it further resolved that the executive director, staff, and Park Commission council are authorized to take all actions reasonable and necessary to file the negative declaration and discharge the Commission's responsibility as lead agency for this action. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
You didn't have to read that point,
I can see that now.
but you do have to make a motion.
I am making a motion.
Second?
I'm listening. So moved.
So moved.
Thank you.
And it's
Seconded.
seconded by my associate down here at the end.
I'm sorry,
I second.
seconded. It's been moved and seconded to approve the secret determination, the negative determination. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Law Enforcement Committee report, Mr. Parker.
We had a law enforcement committee this morning, starting at 9 a.m. Lieutenant Johns reviewed our equipment, and which includes the fact that we now have patrol boats in the water. We are in season. We've made some vehicle changes, which are of no expense to us because we trade our older vehicles in for old vehicles with the state. We never get anything new. The Marine Patrol is conducting firearms training and qualification for all existing patrol folks. The daily patrol begins on April 30th. There's a New York State Park School where our Park Commission Marine officers are very involved in the training of other Marine officers around the state, and that'll be the first part of May. And then we went into executive session and discussed some enforcement actions, and then we left executive session and we adjourned. And so moved for that report.
Second.
We have a second?
that. I do.
A second.
My other associate.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Law Enforcement Committee report. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Final item, public comments. I knew your hand was going. Come on, John.
No. Really?
Thank you, and again, for your record, my name is John Salvador. Your secret determination you just made, if I'm not mistaken, on part 2, there's a question number 5, addresses the subject of wastewater from the facility. And I think the first question is as to whether or not the wastewater would be discharged to a sewage treatment plant. And of course, I guess the answer here is yes. And then it asks you to identify the wastewater treatment plant and, of course, the village sewage treatment plant. The next question is, does the plant have sufficient capacity? And you should give serious consideration to this. You know the problems that the village plant is having. You know the program to upgrade it. And this interpretive center could bring a lot more people to this area and increase the flow from your facility over and above what it is today. And this might have an impact on the sewage treatment. The other thing I'd like to mention, and I've mentioned this before, but with respect to the interface between the commission and local government, it's clear that the commission uses the public record of Warren County as a locator for its projects. Every permit that you grant, whether it's a marina permit or dock permit, has the tax parcel number on it associated with the project. I found in recent years that there are errors in the tax maps. Errors that some of them have been corrected, some of them they refuse to correct, and some of them are still under discussion. one of the biggest errors, this is one where the local government is not accepting the determination of the county, deals with the property boundary of the town of Queensbury. The most recent statute defining the municipal boundaries of the state defined the town of Bolton as running along the east shore of Lake George. That same statute defined the town of Queensbury as running to the shore of Lake George. I conclude from this that the waters of Lake George are foreign to the town of Queensbury. The county has accepted this, and if you look at the tax maps, you'll see they have town of Bolton along the shore, the east shore. Bolton has accepted this. They have a map in their assessor's office showing this. The Census Bureau of the federal government has accepted this, and the town of Lake George has accepted this. The only ones that won't agree are my own town supervisor, Mr. Stroud. He will not agree with this. But you should know that, and take a good look at the tax maps, that all these boat dock permits that you are granting and boathouses are in the town of Bolton, at least those along the shore of Lake George. By the way, this goes for Fort Anne too. In the estuary in Dunham Bay, we have some real serious problems. We find the county has mapped on their tax map parcels of land for which there is absolutely no deeded, recorded description in the public record. Okay? But the parcel appears on the tax map. Likewise, the same parcels have absolutely no definition in mapping. We don't know where it is, what it is, where the boundaries are, but it's on the tax map and being claimed as owner, being claimed by someone as their property. So you've got to take a good look at these things. They're going to be important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Any further comments?
Want a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
Well, congratulations.
I can see, just like last year, you need retraining. These guys definitely need retraining.
Take your hand on the road.
Freaking brag.